Hey, what's happening, guys? Norsky here. In this video we're going to go over some possible DLC melee weapons that could be added in at some point through DLC in Battlefield 1, and also go through some history / info about the weapons and talk about the likelihood that they'll be added in at some point. So basically they're my predictions, so let's get started. First weapon in this video is the French nail knife. The French nail originated in France, obviously, because otherwise it wouldn't be called the French nail. But they were locally fabricated and converted bayonets, knives, and stabbing weapons for use in World War I. These were pretty crude stabbing spikes made by adding a point to the steel stake, which had its rearmost section heated and bent into a crude handle. It's basically a stabbing weapon made from metal posts that held the German barbed wire in place. Now, the French industry was working under wartime conditions with numerous material shortages. Even the officially sanctioned French Army trench knives tend to vary significantly from knife to knife because with the shortages they weren't able to make them very consistent. But the need for knives was so great that the French Army was forced to demobilize hundreds of former cutlery workers so they could return to their former jobs and begin quantity production of trench knives for the armed forces. And also, the French were #1 when it came to trench knife development in World War I. This would be a pretty cool melee weapon to use because of the fact that it's basically a homemade trench knife. Whoever came up with the idea to use a post as some sort of knife was pretty creative and kind of crazy, but it turned out to be a pretty effective way to save money and obviously kill. The likelihood of this weapon being added in through DLC is pretty unlikely, sadly, but you never know since this is a French weapon, so there is a slight chance that they could add this in later DLCs, but probably not DLC 1. Moving on, we have the Shillelagh. Shillelaghs originated in Ireland and are traditionally made from blackthorn wood or oak. The wood would be smeared with butter or lard and placed up a chimney to cure, giving the Shillelagh a typical black shiny appearance. Shillelaghs may be hollowed at the heavy / hitting end and filled with molten lead to increase the weight beyond the typical 2 pounds. This sort of Shillelagh is known as a loaded stick, which is quite the name, huh? But they're commonly the length of a walking stick. Most also have a heavy knob for a handle which can be used for striking, as well as parrying and disarming an opponent. You know how much fun it would be just to give someone a good whack with one of these in Battlefield 1? It would be so satisfying, and I would think it'd honestly be similar to swinging a bat, probably. The likelihood of this weapon being added into Battlefield 1 is pretty low, but there's always a possibility because they already have a few pretty unique melee weapons, so adding a Shillelagh wouldn't be too surprising. I really hope they do add it because that'd be really awesome. The next possible DLC melee weapon that we might see is a push dagger. A push dagger, or alternately known as a push knife, gimlet knife, fist knife, push dirk, or punch dagger. It's a short-bladed dagger with a T-handle designed to be grasped in the hand, typically between the index finger and the middle finger. Back in World War I, when pistols were in short supply, obviously they had to come up with a variety of knives and other stabbing weapons to use. Originally, most of these weapons were fabricated in the field from readily available materials like metal stakes, like the French nail from earlier. Eventually, factory-made examples of knuckle knives and push daggers appeared at the front, and were used by both sides in the conflict. The typical push dagger, referred to as a punch knife by its maker, utilized an aluminum knuckle-type handle cast onto a heat-treated steel dagger blade, or alternately a 5-inch metal spike, which was also blackened to prevent reflections in the moonlight. The push dagger is definitely a unique looking weapon and would be very light and very mobile and also very easy to carry around. I feel that this melee weapon has a decent chance at making it into Battlefield 1 eventually because it was used a decent amount in World War I and is just a very unique weapon compared to what we already have in the game. So why not? Another possible melee weapon that could be added in at some point is the British Trench Club. The British Trench Club, sometimes referred to as the knob carry, is made by placing a flanged metal ring on a standard entrenching tool handle. Weapons like this club still had a place in close quarters fighting, encountered during trench raids. I know we already have trench clubs in Battlefield 1, but with the flanged metal ring, it definitely stands out. It'd be a nice variant of the clubs we already have. Same goes for the German Trench Club. They would really make for some nice additions and make more options to choose from for clubs. They would definitely look cool in Battlefield 1. But I would say there's a pretty likely chance that they'll add more clubs into the game at some point. I'm not sure if it'll be these 2 specific clubs that I mentioned, or other variations, but I guarantee we'll see more clubs eventually. The last melee weapon that we have in this video is the Sawback bayonet. Now, the Germans developed several bayonets for use in World War I, including adapters to allow the use of captured bayonets with German rifles. One of the bayonet developments was the fearsome-looking Sawback bayonet, a knife type that had a series of sharp teeth along the top. This bayonet was designed to do double duty as a field saw to cut wood and kill. But the Allied propaganda seized the chance to make Germans look like bloodthirsty animals and portrayed the bayonets as designed to be particularly destructive to humans. Germans that got captured with these bayonets on hand were often executed on the spot, which is pretty interesting. But this would be a gruesome sword. It could really do some damage, obviously. Surprisingly, we don't have any bayonet melee weapons except as an attachment for some guns. This would definitely be a nice addition to the game because it would be a lot of fun to play with, and just the fact of using a bayonet on one side and a saw on the other side is crazy. It's pretty unlikely that they'll ever add this in, but never say never. Do you think they'll ever add any of these weapons that I mentioned, or do you think they'll add different types of melee weapons? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, that's the video, and as always, hit that like button if you enjoyed. Definitely subscribe to my channel because that would make you more awesome, and I also wouldn't want you to miss any of my awesome content. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll catch you later.